Hello guys, in the previous video we saw Gautam Vivekanand sir's essay topper copy which he had written in the month of August, and I thought that is the latest essay he would have written before his examination because mains, if my memory serves me well, was on 16th September 2022. But I have found another topper copy or booklet which he has written in the month of September on 5th. And this is like hardly 10 days before his mains examination. So this will give us a better peek into how he improved from the previous essay and what was that final strategy that he carried with him in the mains examination. Right? So let's just dive straight into the essay. So the topic is there never was a good war or a bad peace. ठीक है, यहाँ पे कह रहे हैं कि कोई भी जंग किसी भी तरीके से आप उसे जायज़ नहीं कह सकते क्योंकि वो एक रॉन्ग मीन्स है फॉर पीस। ठीक है, और यहाँ पे लिखा है देर इज़ नॉट अ बैड पीस। इसका मतलब ये है कि आप कुछ भी कर मतलब कोई भी ऐसा स्टेप जिससे कि पीस आती है वो आप उसे गलत नहीं कह सकते, आप उसे अनजस्टिफाइड नहीं कह सकते। ठीक है, बैड पीस कुछ नहीं होता, पीस पीस होती है। तो अब इसको हम थोड़ा सा वो कर सकते हैं, जैसे हम एथिक्स में हम पढ़ते हैं जस्ट वॉर थियोरी। तो जस्ट वॉर थियोरी कहती है कि कुछ सिनेरियोज में वॉर जो है वो जस्टिफाइड है। वैसे ही अगर हम बैड पीस की बात करें, वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 में अगर वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के बाद अगर जर्मनी को के साथ एक ह्यूमिलिएटिंग ट्रीटी नहीं होती तो वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 होती ही नहीं। राइट? तो ऐसे हम कर सकते हैं, ऐसे हम बोल सकते हैं। तो लेट अस सी, वैसे ही जो कॉलोनीज़ थी, जो ब्रिटिश कॉलोनीज़ थी, है ना, वो तो चाहती थी कि पीस रहे कॉलोनीज़ में, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर मेंटेन रहे। तो क्या फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल जो है जो कि उस पीस को डिसरप्ट कर रही थी, क्या वो गलत थी? समथिंग ऑन दोज लाइन्स वी कैन राइट, है ना। तो दैट मीन्स दिस इज़ अ गुड ऐसे टॉपिक बिकॉज you are able to generate a lot of arguments. Using some number and arguments, they will justify war. It is for a just cause, they will say, but is it the only way? यहाँ पे ये कह रहे हैं कि they will say कि war is justified because of this reason. But is it the only way? These lines try to depict the reality of war process. Historically speaking, the concept of war can be traced back to ancient times. War, although at a small scale, was fought to protect and control the cattle. In India, the same was termed as Gavishti. ठीक है, तो ही इज़ गिविंग द हिस्टोरिकल एवोल्यूशन ऑफ वॉर कि क्या रीजंस थे और कैसे लड़ा जाता था। पहले इट वाज फॉर द कैटल। ओवर द ईयर्स वॉर्स हैव बीन फॉट फॉर वेरियस रीजंस। फॉर इंस्टेंस इन द मेडिवियल टाइम्स, दिल्ली सुल्तानेट, मुगल्स, इजिप्शियन एम्पायर्स एंड लाइक्स, war was often fought in the name of religion, jihad. What has been constant feature throughout is the fact that there has always been some reason which has been stated to justify wars. These attempts were made to classify the war as good wars. So basically, what he's saying is India, the world has a long history of fighting wars for X, Y, Z reasons, and they have always tried to justify the wars, and they said that these wars are good wars. A good war, it can be said to be where the end goal or the ulterior motive might be a legitimate one. However, be it good or bad, the relation between war and peace has always been antithetical. Where there is war, peace cannot exist. ठीक है. In the same way, we can say that Ashoka expanded and उसने इतनी सारी wars लड़ी until Kalinga. What was the reason? Because he wanted to make a अखंड भारत. ठीक है, यही कहते हैं ना चाणक्य का वो जो आता था टीवी पर। तो वो कह रहे हैं कि क्योंकि एक इसके लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज अच्छे हैं तो ये सारी वॉर्स जस्टिफाइड हैं। एंड ऑन द सेम लाइंस द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ बैड पीस कैन बी डिफाइंड एज अ पीस which might lead to some negative consequences, tangible or intangible. For example, holding on to peace in the face of brutal oppression might have psychological implications. ठीक है, गुड वॉर एंड बैड पीस अ मिथ। तो यहाँ पे ये कह रहे हैं कि जो भी वॉर को गुड माने और पीस को बैड माने वो मिथ है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। वॉर हमेशा बैड होती है और पीस हमेशा गुड होती है, ये कहने की यहाँ पे जस्टिफिकेशन देने की कोशिश की जाएगी। On close observation and analysis, one may realize that indeed there never was a good war or a bad peace. There are several reasons to justify this claim. Firstly, from ethical perspective, means do not justify ends. However, good the war, however good the end goal may be, the path chosen must always be a good one, or else it becomes ethically wrong. For example, during World War II, countries such as Britain and USA attempted to justify the war as a good war. They said that the aim of the war was to protect the world from authoritarian regimes of dictators such as Hitler and Mussolini. Secondly, the fact that there are no winners in a war, it has it is humanity that loses, makes one realize that there can never truly be a good war. The number of people that died during the two global wars is indicative of the same. तो मतलब उन्होंने कह दिया कि इट इज़ गुड फॉर द वर्ल्ड टू मेंटेन पीस, टू मेंटेन बैलेंस, आप कुछ भी बोलो, लेकिन वॉर जस्टिफाइड नहीं है क्योंकि लोग तो मरे ना, कि कितने लोग मर गए, कि विच इंडिकेट्स दैट वर्ल्ड वॉर्स वर नॉट अ गुड वॉर, चाहे यूएसए और ब्रिटेन कितनी भी कोशिश कर ले जस्टिफाई करने की. थर्डली, वॉर undoes मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोग्रेस दैट मैनकाइंड हैज़ मेड ओवर सेंचुरीज. फिर उसके बाद एक रीसेंट कंटेक्स्ट डाल दिया है. द रीसेंट रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर इज द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ द सेम. It severely disrupted the decades of peace and global cooperation that the world had maintained after World War II. Next, the manifold and multidimensional impact that war has prevents it from ever becoming a good war. At the psychological level, war causes anxiety, depression, and PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. Considering the social impact, war leads to issues such as displacement, loss of brotherhood, and refugee crisis. In fact, the refugee issue during the conflict between East Pakistan and West Pakistan was the very reason why there ended up being a Indo-Pak war. Economically, wars cause loss of livelihood and leads to poverty and widening inequality. For example, countries in Africa such as Niger, Chad and Cameroon, which are war prone, are the countries where poverty and hunger are maximum. तो यहाँ पे वो कह रहे हैं कि वॉर अच्छी कैसे हो सकती है, ना एथिकली अच्छी है, ना साइकोलॉजिकली, ना सोशली, ना इकोनॉमिकली. और यहाँ पे ये एग्जांपल अफ्रीका का भी दे दिया. मोर ओवर दीज रीजन्स रिमेन हाईली अंडर डेवलप्ड. सिमिलरली, बैड पीस टू ऑफन रिमेन्स अ मिथ. कैसे? वन ऑफ द प्राइमरी रीजन बिहाइंड दिस इज दैट पीस इज ओनली lasting and sustainable solution. India's freedom struggle, जो कि नॉन वायलेंट थी, led by Mahatma Gandhi, is an indicative of the same. Moreover, peace truly brings people and the world together. It leads to flourishing of universal humanism and brotherhood. Nelson Mandela's peaceful struggle in South Africa is an example of the same. And another example is how Martin Luther King Jr., after being inspired by Gandhiji, fought peacefully for the rights of the black. ठीक है. Additionally, it can be said that peace leads to development in all the spheres and walks of life. How is it that the peace can be categorized as bad? अब वो पूछ रहे हैं कि जब पीस से इतना कुछ अच्छा हो रहा है तो हम उसे बैड कैसे बोल सकते हैं. वन नीड वन नीड ओनली लुक अ फ्यू डिकेड्स बैक टू रियलाइज दिस. अब वो थीसिस दे दी, अब एंटी थीसिस बता रहे हैं. आफ्टर सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर, जापान amended its constitution to add a provision that it prohibits Japan that prohibits Japan participating in any war. This led to renewed focus on development and peace. And today, Japan is one of the most developed and successful countries in the world. However, a question that arises is whether good war and bad peace can never occur. और कि यहाँ पे ये कह रहे हैं कि जैसे वहाँ पे लिखा था ना कि बैड वॉर, कि मतलब हर वॉर जो है वो बैड होती है और हर पीस गुड होती है. अब वो कह रहे हैं क्या कोई वॉर्स अच्छी और कोई पीस खराब हो सकती हैं? ऑलवेज सम एक्सेप्शंस. तो यहाँ पे आ गई एंटीथेसिस, ऊपर नहीं थी, यहाँ पर है. Although the occurrences are rare and few, from one perspective there have been instances of good war and bad peace. One of the reasons behind the same is that the terms good and bad are highly subjective, therefore strict classification becomes extremely difficult. One example of a good war can be the global war on terrorism led by United States of America after 9/11 attacks. There are many who argue that global war is indeed necessary to effectively curtail and eradicate terrorism. Similarly, an example of bad peace can be peace agreements between USA and Taliban that happened just a year back. It led to downfall of democratically elected Afghanistan government and rise of authoritarian Taliban regime. Here, as one can clearly see, peace was indeed bad. Even today, the operation by Taliban continues. What one may realize from this is that sometimes things are not black and white, especially in their especially in their gray world. That being said, it is also imperative to understand that it is war that should remain an exception and peace should always be the priority. तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने बता दिया कि some wars were good, for example war against terrorism, and some peace was bad, for example the peace agreement between USA and Taliban. और फिर लास्ट में लिख दिया कि मैं ऐसा मानता नहीं हूँ, ये एक्सेप्शन है. At national level, countries need to learn from Japan and strive towards no war policy. Similarly, India's policy of no first attack is also a positive sign. At global level, there needs to be strong institutional measures to prevent war. Whatever be the cause, attempt must be made to strengthen global cooperation by transparent and open participation in organizations such as United Nations. तो यहाँ पे कह रहे हैं कि आप जापान को देखो कि नो वॉर पॉलिसी है, इंडिया की भी है नो फर्स्ट अटैक पॉलिसी. इन द सेम वे यूनाइटेड नेशंस जैसी बॉडीज़ को आगे आना पड़ेगा ताकि ग्लोबल पीस रहे. वन मस्ट ऑलवेज रिकॉल द वर्ड्स ऑफ विल्फ्रेड ओवन हु इन हिज पोयम, ये पोयम का नाम है, exposed the myth of just war. My friend, you will not tell with such, okay, high jest, old lie, meaning it's sweet and fitting to die for your country. मतलब I don't read a lot, so I can't really translate it. Now let's go to section B. टॉपिक क्या है? He who will not economize will have to agonize. ठीक है, देख लेते हैं. Both India and Pakistan achieved freedom in 1947. Thereafter, the two newborn nations had a huge task at their hands. While India chose a very carefully planned approach, the same was not in the case with Pakistan. The result today is evident. India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, whereas Pakistan is still struggling with poverty, growth, and economic crisis. While India chose to economize, the Pakistan's approach was more of being a combination of ad hoc and wasteful. The Indian experience clearly highlights the need to economize. However, before further substantiation, it is imperative to understand the term economize. तो आई थिंक ना, मतलब वो वही व्हाट, वाई और हाउ, इसमें ऐसे को चला ले रहे हैं. बहुत ही बढ़िया अप्रोच है. In narrow sense, the term is generally associated with finance. It means to practice thrift, reduce wasteful expenditure, and have a planned approach. However, in a broad sense, the term can be extended to many fields. For example, recycling of waste is an example of economization. What Japan did during Tokyo Olympics 2020 speaks of the same. Japan had created medals by extracting valuable metals from e-waste. Similarly, in the energy sector, saving energy, practicing earth hour are examples of economization. The same can be said about saving natural resources such as water. Additionally, the term economization can also be extended to governance in the sense that minimum government, maximum governance can be said to resemble economization. Need to economize. There are a couple of primary reasons that justify the need to economize. Firstly, the fact that resources are limited but wants are unlimited makes it imperative to economize. In the context of India, India has only 24% of global land, but it has to support 17.2.4 sorry. India has only 2.4% of global land, but it has to support 17% of global population. Secondly, economization is extremely important to achieve sustainable and long lasting growth. ठीक है, मतलब भाई वो वर्ड इट इज हिटिंग यू, मतलब ऐसे हो रहा है ना कि बार बार घूम घूम के आ रहा है. ठीक है. The term sustainable refers to fulfilling the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow. In fact, if the world wishes to achieve the target set during the Paris conference, limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, the world has to economize both financially as well as with respect to energy and natural resources. No economization is equal to agony. It is indeed true that he who will not economize will have to agonize, and this can be logged at different levels for having a better clarity. This can be looked at different levels for having a better clarity. At the individual level, one who does not economize will face manifold economic and social issues. It will lead to poverty and reduced standard of living. For example, wasteful expenditure and lack of planning often leads to a vicious cycle of poverty and debt. At the level of family, so what he is doing is individual level, फिर उसके बाद he is going to the family level. At the family level or an organization, an economization will lead to severe will non-economization can lead to severe distress, loss of employment and bankruptcy. A family that does not economize simply passes down its agony to the next generation. But yeah, the example of Vijay Mallya and Kingfisher Airlines highlights the same. Lack of economization led to unsustainable debt of over 500 crores and eventually led to bankruptcy. This caused agony not only for the employees of the company, but those who lost their jobs and also the lenders who had lent their money. Next, at societal level too, non-economization has negative consequences which leads to agony. Lack of economization plays a part in perpetuating inequality and causing issues such as hunger. The reports such as Global Hunger Index and World Inequality Report paints a grim picture. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे कह रहे हैं सोसाइटल लेवल पे अगर हम इकोनॉमाइजेशन नहीं करें तो उससे इनइक्वालिटी फैलती है. क्यों? क्योंकि डेवलपमेंट फिर इंक्लूसिव नहीं हो पाती, और क्योंकि डेवलपमेंट इंक्लूसिव नहीं हो पाती तो उसकी वो और वही सेम चीज़ दिखाता है कि हंगर एंड पॉवर्टी हाई रहती है, और वही ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स भी दिखा रहा है. मूविंग अप, nations that do not economize face many fold problems before 90 और उसमें एग्जांपल दे रहे हैं यहाँ पे. Before 1991 reforms, India faced a balance of payment crisis due to lack of economization. Similarly, Sri Lanka today is witnessing a severe economic crisis due to the same reason. कि Sri Lanka's populist measures completely discarded the need to economize, and it has led to severe distress. Lastly, at the international level, the world suffers agony in the form of issues such as climate change, loss of biodiversity, and reduction in resources leading to threat of conflict and war. IPC's sixth assessment report has talked about irreversible changes that have already taken place. ठीक है. Way forward, it is evident by now that the way forward is to economize. Certain steps measures if taken can help in the process of economization. Firstly, economization has to be made institutional made an institutional quality. The basic process of budgeting can have remarkable effect. Preparing and sticking to a budget leads to better control over expenditure and usage. Secondly, the need to economize should be clearly conveyed to children right from the younger days. In school, in schools, students must be taught about importance of practicing thrift. Thirdly, good efforts made by people organization with respect to economization must be recognized and encouraged. Offering awards or some economic or other benefits can truly bring a positive change in people. People needs to walk on the middle path between spending and saving. Lastly, the words of Mahatma Gandhi can act as guide for all on the path of economization. He said, he said, देयर इज enough in the world for everybody's need but not for their greeds. In this light, one can learn and practice quality of economization to have a peaceful, happy and agony free life. बढ़िया, कंक्लूजन बहुत अच्छा लिखा था. एंड द दिस वर्ड राइट, मे बी इट इज़ नॉट माई, मेरी जनरल डे की वोकैबलरी में ये वर्ड नहीं आता. तो वेन एवर इट वॉज कमिंग आई वॉज गेटिंग एनॉयड, है ना. तो अगर मुझे लिखना होता ना तो मैं इसका मतलब वैसा करता कि इन्वायरमेंट में सस्टेनेबिलिटी, इकोनॉमी में फिस्कल पॉलिसी, FRBM, फिर उसके बाद जोग्राफी में या फिर इन्वायरमेंट में सस्टेनेबिलिटी एंड इन्वायरमेंट इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट. फिर इसके बाद लेट्स से पॉलिटी में हम एग्जांपल दे सकते थे मे बी ऑफ गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग का, कि कैसे मतलब डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफ़र जो है उसने प्रोसेस को एफिशिएंट और इकोनॉमिक बनाया है. तो कुछ ऐसा भी हम लिख सकते थे. चलिए.